Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, I got the whiteboard out behind me. Today we're going to do the second part of our specialty shots series. Today's discussion will be kisses, also known as caroms. We're going to take that subject on, we're going to do it in depth, and we are going to explore some of the mechanics of how they work along the way. We're going to incorporate some things with our discussion of our previous discussion on multi-rail kicks. We're going to also talk about something called the ghost ball shot, which is something that comes up fairly frequently in 8-ball and straight pool. Not so much 9-ball, but it does come up. It's just a form of a kiss or a carom where the object balls are fairly close together, and so you get a natural you get a natural angle to pocket the ball. Okay, so let's start out by defining what a kiss is. So let me just real quick give us something that looks kind of like a table. Alright, so here's our table. Alright, so if we have a ball, let's say we're playing 9-ball, and the 9 is sitting right in the corner. We've got the 1 ball sitting out here, and we've got the cue ball over here. Okay, so a kiss or a carom would be when you take the ball off of another ball to make when you take the cue ball off another object ball to make a second object ball in a pocket. Something like this. Or to leave the cue ball in a certain place. This comes in safeties a lot. The idea being that you want to pocket a ball by coming off of another ball. So you're not doing a combo where you would run the 1 into the 9 into the pocket. Here you're using the 1 as a temporary bank so that you can come from the 1 and your cue ball ends up pocketing the 9. That's a carom. And I'm just going to call them caroms, not kisses. It's a carom. So how does a carom work? Well, there are 2 things that are in big play when you're talking about caroms. Okay? The first one is, there are 3 things actually. There are 3 factors you need to consider. So, there's my object ball, and here is a tangent line, meaning that this is actually touching. A tangent line that is 90 degrees. This angle is 90 degrees. Okay, and so if you were to take that tangent line, or if you were to take that direction of travel and move it, that is a horrible line. That's not even close to straight. Then your 90-degree angle would become this way, right? So as you move around the ball, this angle moves with it. And this is the angle we're looking at. Because when the cue ball, get another color for that. Let me take this out. All right, so when your cue ball strikes that ball, it's going to hit it. The cue ball is going to be there, right? Because remember, we're not aiming to the center of the ball to the center of the ball, we're aiming the edge of the ball to the edge of the ball. So in order to follow that line, from a pure theoretical standpoint, this 90-degree angle, you would hit that cue ball so that the edge of the cue ball hits that tangent at the place where a 90-degree angle comes off to hit that ball, to hit the 9 ball. And so let's look at that real quick. So if I have two balls here, right? I've got the 7 and the 8, and I want to figure out where I need to hit the 7. I would basically draw a line next to the 7 and into the 8, right? And then look and see where I would have to aim in order to make contact at that point. And so once I've done that, I can get down and just make that shot in. And of course I scratched, but that's not germane to the discussion right now. We'll talk about that in just a second. So the idea being, you aim across the face of the object ball to find out where you need to hit it in order to make contact with the ball in the pocket, and then you shoot the ball and let it come off and hit it. Fairly straightforward. This also works if you have another ball involved. So, and we talked about frozen balls in, that just actually sounded bad. We talked about when you had two balls that were frozen together in the past. We talked about this. But if you hit this ball, it will follow that line, and that is still true. All it is when it's already touching is that it's a carom that you don't have to aim as closely, because anywhere you hit it, this ball is going to follow that line. And we talked about how to adjust it, and we talked about grow and a few other concepts along with that. But that's the basic idea of a carom. So if you have another ball, okay, let's say I have another object ball here, and my cue ball is here, then if I can shoot my cue ball into this ball, and this ball makes contact right here, then I'll make the same shot, because it's still coming off it at the same angle regardless. So that's the basics of it. Now there's, like I said, there's a couple of things, a couple of factors to keep in mind here. So this is theoretical. The reality of this is that when you shoot the cue ball, and we've talked about this concept before as well, when you shoot the cue ball with no English, it actually imparts forward momentum. The momentum and the drag against the cloth actually makes it pick up top English, which means that your real angle coming off of that ball is not 90 degrees, it's actually forward of that. So the ball comes off and drifts forward, almost in a, well, maybe not that much of a curve, but in a curve. That's highly exaggerated. So if we were to plan this and we tried to be perfect with it, and we got our line to come straight through the center of that ball, right? And again, that's a tangent line. I'm free drawing, which I'm not real good at, so it doesn't look like it's touching, but it actually is. If we aim directly at the center of that ball, what's actually going to happen is the cue ball is going to come, and depends on how hard you hit it. I'm just assuming I roll it like I did the shot I just shot a few minutes ago. And this ball will slightly curve off of that, okay? And if the ball's close enough to the pocket, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to make two that are out in the center of the table, it gets a little more tricky. So your actual travel is this red line. So you're not traveling 90 degrees, you're actually traveling less than that. Or you're not coming off on a 90-degree angle, you're coming off on a slightly shallower angle. Okay, and you actually saw that happen a minute ago. If you were to go back and look at that shot that I shot on the table just a second ago, where the 8-ball was sitting here. It was over to the left side of the pocket. I measured it to hit here, but when it actually hit it hit it right here and followed it into the pocket. That's why that happened. And you saw me do exactly that. So we know that we have the three things we're trying to consider are the angle. The second thing we have to consider is momentum. And there's another piece of that momentum puzzle to show you, and I'll show you this on the table. If my cut is very, very thin, okay, there will be less of that drift. So this one, instead of going 90 degrees like that, might go 89 degrees because it's just so incredibly thin that there's no impact to the direction of the ball from that momentum. It's still traveling in the same general direction. So the thinner you cut it, the less that drift happens with no English. The second thing is, and that's our other thing, is spin, just so you're aware of that as well. Angle, momentum, and spin on this one are the three things we're considering. The other thing is, if the more direct you have to hit it, in other words, if your angle through the ball is this, and your angle from the center of the cue ball to the center of that ball is that, the smaller this angle is, the harder you have to hit it to get it to drift off. So if it was directly straight on, you know from shooting that if it's straight, center to center, and you hit it, the cue ball doesn't do anything. It either stops, or depending on how hard you hit it, it either stops or it drifts forward a little bit, but it doesn't move to either side if it's straight on. If there's a slight angle, in this case we've got a very small angle. If we hit that hard, we might get it to drift a little bit, but there's a finite amount of area that it'll go. Likewise, if we go back and we look at, we actually could have left our red line, but so if we actually, oh no, we couldn't. Yeah, we could. If we go back and look at this shot, right? Well, here would be the center of the cue for that shot, and you can see this angle is much, much bigger, and so therefore this ball will lose less momentum in the contact, meaning that it still has more motion after the hit. So the further we skew our aiming point away from the center of the balls, the farther the cue ball is going to travel after the hit. So momentum plays a really, really big part in this. And the last thing that we need to talk about with regard to kisses is spin. So here's how spin works. The fuller the contact with the object ball, the more the spin affects the shot. Okay, so if I hit this straight on with a lot of follow, it's going to follow it straight, right? If I hit this with a lot of draw, it's going to come straight back. But what if I hit it at a tangent? So I hit it over here, right? If my contact point is here and I follow it, the cue ball will bounce off of this ball and it will actually come out like this and then spin forward with power forward. If I hit this, and I'm talking about hitting it hard with power English, if I hit this hard with draw, it will come out and then it will catch and spin that way. So you can see, you can control with your English how you're hitting this ball. And here's my rule of thumb on that. If I'm looking at the cue ball and let's say I don't have this full ball hit like this. The way that I figure out, let's say this ball is over here. And I need to get to this ball. Okay, well, if we draw our tangent line, okay, and we draw our line from center to center, I'm going to have natural forward motion. That angle, I have very little room to hit that and just naturally drift that way because I'm almost straight in, right? So what I have to do is I have to either come off this side and across the banks, or I can hit this and draw it to come across. And so my two options are I can hit over here and come off the rail and across, or I can hit over here and let the cue ball and draw the cue ball. Now, you hear me talking about odds all the time. Well, this side is the higher percentage shot there if you are sure that this object ball is going to get out of the way. And the problem with this shot is, so let's say we hit it there. This object ball is going to go this way. And so now you've got a shot where timing comes into play. And I do not like timed shots. Because you can see we're pushing this object ball into the path that we want our cue ball to take. And just for clarity, let me put this in the center of the pocket. We're pushing this object ball into the path. We might be okay and have the cue ball come across and not hit it. I will tell you Murphy's Law is in effect. If you put this ball in the path that the cue ball is going to travel, you just have to plan on it double kissing. It's just going to happen. You can do the math to figure it out, but typically I don't have a slide rule or a calculator when I'm shooting shots, so I don't even want to mess with that. What I want to do is I want to hit it here, push this ball this way, out of the way of the shot, and curve the cue ball. So how do I figure out how to do this? Well, a lot of it's feel. A lot of it is a lot of practice. But as a typical rule, the way that I figure this is I look at this angle right here and I say, okay, that's a 20-degree angle. Then I look at my cue ball and I say, okay, so here's my midpoint of the cue ball. I'm going to go 20 degrees below it. And so I'm kind of calculating the angle inside the cue ball to the center of the cue ball. So that's kind of how I figure that, and it's worked pretty effectively. It's not perfect, but it gets me close. So let's look at that one on the table. Pull this out a little so that we're not sinking it in the pocket to make it. All right, so the two ways to shoot this. One is to go across the front and across the table, and you can see anytime you put the cue ball in the path, you just have to assume that it's going to hit the ball. So I can shoot this a bunch of times, a bunch of different speeds. Maybe I get it, maybe I don't. If I'm lucky that the 7 moves out of the way, and the closer the 7 is to this rail, the less odds there are of it getting in the way. But if I go the other way with it, and again, I'm setting up this shot, I'm going to hit it a little bit left of center, and I'm going to use a little bit of draw. So since I'm using draw, I'm going to aim over here and then let my English compensate for the miss. That's my plan. I'm not going to aim at direct angle to it, because if I do, I'm just hitting straight into it and it does nothing for me. I need to hit to the left, which means that I'm going to be aiming. My aim point's going to be somewhere over here, and then I'm going to apply enough draw. And again, you see, if you look at the angles, you can see I've got that same 20-degree angle here that I drew from here. It's easier to see this way. There's about a 20-degree angle, so I'm going to hit 20 degrees below center. I'm going to start at the center point. I'm going to, hold on. Okay, so I'm back. We're going to continue the Kisses, Caroms, and Banks. The phone call that you heard me get just a moment ago actually happened 2 days ago, and I'm just finally getting back to work on the videos. So what we were talking about is, and I'm just going to set this up again, and I went back and reviewed what I had done so far, and I have a couple things I want to show you real quick related to what we have been talking about. So the first thing is, remember I was talking about if the ball was nearly straight in, so that your angle to the shot was approximately a 90-degree angle. So there's no distance between the direction the cue ball is traveling and the ball. So this is a dead-on hit in order to get this. And so when you shoot that, I talked about how momentum plays a role here, and that when you hit full, the cue ball just doesn't go very far. So you see, even hitting it hard, I came nowhere near my angle. And I did cheat the pocket a little bit to try to get it to give me as much roll as possible. Again, if my angle to make the shot, and this is kind of hard to do because it's right by the pocket and I want to make the ball all the time. But if I hit it hard, you can see the cue ball doesn't even go that way. It may go forward because I've got a little bit of forward spin on it. It may go backwards because I've got some draw on it. But at the end of the day, it's not going off at that tangent angle that we talked about. Okay, so what we talked about is on this shot, and this is the one that I had on the board. If my tangent line, which is the inside edge of the cue here, is close to a 90-degree angle, what I can do is I can turn that angle and then compensate with draw. And what should happen is it comes off and it curves that way. Now I don't want to do it quite as extreme as I just had it. You can do this at almost any tangent point on here. The difference is you need more and more and more draw, the thinner the thinner our shot becomes. So here we need a lot of draw, and at some point it does become impossible about there, where it's just too thin for the draw to actually catch. You have to have some impact. You have to have at least, I'm going to say, a quarter of a ball. That may not be the exact mathematical one, but for all intents and purposes, if you're getting less than a quarter of a ball hit, you're probably not going to get the English you think you are. And it has diminishing returns the thinner it gets beyond that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try for about a half ball hit, it looks like. Yeah, about a half ball hit will put me there. Again, we've got, I deliberately engineered this so we have that 20-degree angle coming to the object ball, which means I'm going to hit that cue ball 20 degrees below center. And I'm going to hit it with a good stroke. Well, and I hit it pretty good, I just missed. And this is why this is in my list of shots that I don't shoot if I don't have to. It's notoriously inaccurate. You can practice this shot forever, and you might get up to where you've got a 60 or 70% chance of making it, but I wouldn't count on it. You can also help this out by hitting a little fuller and using bottom inside English or bottom left English, and that helps the cue ball to spin off of this rail, and maybe if you come in here, it spins enough to cut it in. So those are some things you can do. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is a shot called the tickie. And this comes up all the time. And it's amazing how many people don't even see it on the table when it's there. So this comes from three cushion billiards. And in three cushion billiards, you have a pretty famous case where you've got something like this and your cue ball is out here. And so what you have to do is you have to hit any combination of three rails before you hit the second ball. Those are the rules for three cushion billiards. And the tickie works like this. You put inside English, so in this case it would be right hand English. You hit the rail, it hits the ball, it hits the rail and comes off two and hits that ball. And it's a pretty common shot in three cushion. Well, if I don't knock the ball out of the way. That's what I get for trying to avoid the corner pocket. But you'll have something like this. Let's say it's up here. And you'll have a shot like this, and the shot in billiards would be the tickie, which again, no pockets on a billiards table. It comes in, it drops in, and spins out. So how does this work when you're playing 9-ball or 8-ball or whatever? Well, okay, so I'm not allowed. Let's say I've got something like this, and the cue ball's down here. There are two ways to make this shot. One of them I'm going to talk about next after this, which is called the ball elimination shot. It's actually a really nice shot. It's spectacular, really, really cool, and one of my favorite shots that people just don't see on the table when it's sitting there. Well, let's talk about the tickie. The idea is come off the rail, hit the 1, because that's the first ball we have to hit, go down the rail and make the 9. You can see I almost didn't have to aim at that because it self-corrects to a degree. I couldn't make the combination because the 7's in the way. If I tried to make the combination, I couldn't make it. So instead, I just come off the rail, off the 1, and try to make the 9. And I missed it that time. Again, that's why this is in the list of specialty shots. It's called the tickie. There are a bunch of versions of it. There's also one version of it called the machine gun shot, which is a very famous trick shot that looks something like this. And I'm not setting it up exact, so I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to make it. But basically, the idea is you come off the rail, off the 1, off the rail, off the 3, off the rail, off the 4, off the rail, make the 9. And it looks really cool when you actually do it right. Like I said, well, that's the other way to make that. Like I said, I didn't set it up, but that would be the idea, would be off the rail, off the one, off the rail, off, and it just keeps going back to the rail. I didn't take the time to set it up. Maybe I'll do that sometime when I'm showing trick shots. Maybe I'll do a trick shot video with a bunch of the common ones and show you the layouts and how they sit and how to shoot them. Okay, so that's the tickie. The next one, this is a really cool shot that I told you I was going to show you. And this one's called the ball elimination shot. So Ray Martin spends a surprising amount of time talking about this shot in his books. So you got something like this. There's nothing lined up where it's going to make that 9. So what you do in the ball elimination shot is you shoot as if the 7 and the 4 weren't there, and you force follow through is one way to do this. So you're aiming to come off the 1 with force follow and make the 9, bang, everything moves out of the way and the cue ball drives through, and I missed the shot, but you get the idea. I moved all the balls out of the way and then drove the cue ball through the middle of them. And that comes up actually quite a bit. You'll get these little messes down on the end of the rail like this, where you really don't have a good shot and you're kind of thinking about it and you're not sure what to do. And so the answer is just go right through them. Well, okay, too much force on the one. We put this up like this so that they actually have a way to scatter, because the last ones didn't, and turn it so that we're not making the ball. And basically move the balls out of the way and come through the middle. We moved them out of the way and then the cue ball goes through the middle. It's called the ball elimination shot. Another one to play with. Comes up an amazing amount of time when you're playing games, and almost nobody sees it. It especially comes up in straight pool and 8-ball, where you have a lot of balls on the table and you tend to have balls that are stuck together. So ball elimination shot. You heard me mention the ghost ball shot. The ghost ball shot works like this. I have 2 balls that are, so let me back up. There's a reason this is called the ghost ball shot. And the reason is because when you are when you're aiming and you're new at aiming, what they tell you is pretend like there's a ball there exactly where you need to hit it, and then aim for the center of that ghost ball, and they call it the ghost ball. Okay, and it's an aiming system. And I'll show you this cue in a second. It's actually a pretty important one if you're going to get serious about the game. Okay, so ghost ball is pretending there's a ball here so that you can aim at the center of this ball and you make that ball. It's an aiming system. I'm not real fond of aiming systems, but it's as good as any. Some people swear by it, some people hate it. Personally, I just don't care. Aiming comes from practice, not from some fancy training method. Okay, so the idea behind the ghost ball shot is, let's say we're playing 8-ball, okay? Let's say we're playing 8-ball and we've got the solids, and we've got 2 solids. They're relatively close together, like so, okay? Well, if we use our ghost ball aiming method and we look and it's touching both of those balls at the same time, then we have an amazing amount of latitude, because if we hit up here, guess what? That ball comes off and it hits it in exactly the right place. If it's up here, we hit it and it caroms off and it hits it in exactly the right place. So having those 2 balls together gives you something where you have more latitude to be wrong. You can make a bigger mistake and still get exactly the outcome that you want. And if you use a little bit of English with it, I usually use English away from it. You don't even really have to aim, the ball just goes in. So that's the ghost ball. And it's very specifically, once again, you got two balls that are close together, close enough that you would consider maybe it might be a simultaneous hit. And they set up in such a way that if you come off of either one of those balls, all you have to do is aim for the gap in the middle and it's going to go in. And again, just to show you what that looks like. So those two balls are in a perfect setup for a ghost ball. All I have to do is hit anywhere inside the gap between the two balls. Anywhere in this valley that's formed by the two tangents. So I can hit anywhere in here and that one ball goes in. And these come up in the middle of a rack. Somebody gets a bad break, you've got a mess in the center of the table. You're playing straight pool and the rack's been bumped, but it hasn't been broken open. These show up everywhere in there. And again, I just use a little bit of English away from the shot, and it goes in without even really aiming. It's just that easy. It's not a specialty shot so much as it is a way of increasing your probability of making the shot. So keep your eyes open for ghost ball opportunities. And that's going to be about it for the Kisses, Caroms, ghost ball, and these other things. So what we talked about very specifically, we talked about in your Caroms, you always figure from a 90-degree angle, natural angle. You have the angle that you have to hit it. The thinner the angle is, the faster the cue ball is traveling. So dead-on hits are very hard to do what you want them to do. Thin hits do not allow the spin to take effect. So if I try to draw on a less than a quarter ball hit, the spin will not take effect. The English, the draw, the follow, it's just going to do whatever it would do if I just hit it with no English. Quarter ball hit and greater, then I get the full effect of the English. The thicker that hit is from that point on, the more the English takes effect. That's how you get those nice shots where the cue ball hits a ball, comes down, and then spins over and curves. That's where that comes from. You can aid the spin on those by using bottom inside English if you're drawing. That will give you the maximum, because it's both the draw and it's also, if it's inside, that means that it's also fighting against the angle to begin with. So you can maximize how far that cue ball curves by using not just bottom, but bottom inside English. Bottom outside English, you still get the draw, and then you get the spin off the rail. So if you need the cue ball to travel after it hits the rail, then you use bottom outside. If you need the cue ball to have the maximum possible effect on that curve, you use bottom inside English. So angle, momentum, and spin, those were the three things that were important when you're talking about Caroms, and we went through those in detail. We talked about using a second object ball, and I don't know that I demonstrated that, so let me do that one time. That's the concept where you've got a shot on the one ball here, and you need to make the 9. You figure out your tangent angle. And remember that your English is reduced by half every ball that it goes through. So if I put maximum spin up draw on this one, this ball is going to have follow on it at half the speed of the draw that I put on. So it's going to be spinning half the speed, not moving half the speed, but spinning half the velocity in the spin that I put on it, put on the cue ball drawing it. If I put top on the cue ball, follow, then this is going to have draw, because it reverses every ball. We talked about that before. Reverses every ball, so this is going to have draw on it, but it's only going to have half as much spin as what I put on the cue ball. And if you know follow, force follow is very hard to do accurately. Not in terms of accuracy of making the shot, but in terms of being able to control how much spin there is. And it doesn't transfer as well as draw does, because when we put follow on this ball, we're trying to draw this ball, but the felt is going to be dragging against the top that we put on this and against the draw we put on this. So it's trying to spin this way. Okay, it's trying to spin this way, but the cloth is trying to force it this way, so you also lose a bunch of spin to the friction of the cloth when you do that. And you've seen that shot before, where you've got a ball in the pocket and you've got another one out here and you're pretty much straight in, so you just draw the heck out of it and the one ball follows the 6 into the pocket. This shot here, well, helps if I actually aim and get it to go straight into the ball. So we got a straight in shot. And it follows it in. And that happens because we put draw on the cue ball, which put follow on the one ball hit the 6, and then followed it in. All right, so in our shot where we're trying to make the 9, and for whatever reason, maybe there's something in the way here that's not going to let us see the 9 directly, we can always shoot off the 6. We find our tangent line. Again, we don't have to worry about all that forward motion that we did before. We still have to worry about the friction caused by the carpet, but not the English on the cue ball. So maybe we aim just a little bit to the inside of it. We find out where that aims. We aim our one ball at that to make sure that we know where we're going to hit it. And then we shoot the 1 and hit it right where we just aimed. And if we did it right, the one ball goes over there and makes the 9. Again, this is why I call these specialty shots. They're shots that you only do as a last resort. I would rather play safe than play that shot in almost every case. Now, if you were paying attention, there was another option there, which was to, let's see, we were pretty much straight on that. The other option was just simply to run the cue ball down the rail and try to make the 9 directly. That's a higher percentage shot than this trying to carom off a ball. So the reality of this shot is 1 in 1,000 shots you'll see it actually come up in a game where you should take it. So again, angle, momentum, spin. Don't ever do it unless you absolutely have to. Or it's a ghost ball setup where you're taking advantage of the closeness of the balls to guarantee your shot. On ghost ball shots, I like to use just a little bit of inside English to help it into the pocket, just in case I get some throw or some deflection that throws me off. So that's it. That's everything we need to talk about right now with Carom. We also talked about the ticky shot, which comes up quite often. In fact, we were playing league, and I was playing in the league match, which was 8-ball, and the guy that was shooting had something like this, and his next shot was up here. And his first thought was he was just going to try to thin that 1 and see and roll the cue ball down the table somewhere. And I said, well, why do that? Why not make the 6 and leave the 7? And he said, well, that'd be great if there was a way to do it. And I showed it to him and said, look, all you have to do is come off that rail, a little bit of right hand English, hit the one. Of course, you actually have to hit the one. Hit the one, let it roll down, make the 6, and in this case it stopped dead, but he'd still be shooting, he'd have it safe. In reality, what happened is when he hit the 6 ball, it hit it thin, it came off like that with spin and went just like that up and laid up nice and straight in almost on his 7 ball. So so the tickie does come in handy. It does come up for real. And that's pretty much all you need to know about caroms. You can take advantage of caroms and tie them together with some of the other things. So if you remember, I talked about 3-rail banks, and I don't know if I showed you this in the video, but let's say we've got something like this out here. So here's how you put those together. So as a reminder, the 3-rail bank is center of the 2nd diamond, from the center of the pocket through the 2nd diamond, see what it points at on the wall, and it's actually the rail in front of the 2nd diamond. See what it points at on the wall, and that's your aim point. So if I look at this and I go, okay, through the 2nd diamond, that's about there, make the 9 for me. And it's a natural angle, it goes every time. Same shot, but now I have to hit the 3 first. I can take that and find my tangent line that runs through that point on the rail, and then just hit that point with inside English, and guess what? Guess what just happened again? Natural 3-rail shot. We did it, and I'll do that from the other direction so you can see it. This is a very, very well-known 3-cushion shot. In fact, it's the basis of how you play large runs in 3-cushion billiards, because it sets itself back up over and over and over again if you do it at the right speed. So, all right, center of the pocket, through the 2nd diamond, tangent line to that point, find out where it's going to hit, a little bit of inside English, and well, we got close. You get the idea. You can take advantage of knowing these caroms to make other shots that you know how to make work, especially when you're talking about multiple rail banks. So with that, I'm going to leave you. I did mention, actually before I leave, I did mention this cue ball. This is the Jim Rempe training ball. It has 2 sides to it. It's used to practice your English. Has 2 sides. One side has high, low, high right, right, low, left, left, and high left. And then of course center ball. And then the other side has rings on it. It's got the center ball hit, and then it's got rings going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what you do with this is, if you're shooting, especially if you're having a problem with your stroke, you set it up as your cue ball, turn it towards the shot you're doing, make sure you chalk, and then hit your center ball hit. And after you hit your center ball hit, what you'll see is that on the ball, there's a blue dot. In this case, it's right on the head of the guy. That shows you where you actually made contact with the cue ball. So if you're having problems with stroke and your English isn't doing what you think it is, this is a great way to find out where you're actually hitting the cue ball. It's available on Amazon. I got that at Greater Southern Billiards in Alpharetta, Georgia. You can get them pretty much any pool hall. If you go ask the owner and say, I want a Jim Rempe training cue ball, he'll know exactly what you mean, or you shouldn't be shooting in that pool hall. I don't use it for training. I use it for figuring out where I'm hitting the cue ball. Because remember, when you're shooting this, your focus should not be on the cue ball. Initially, your focus is on the cue ball while you're figuring out where you're going to hit it. then you raise your eyes to the shot and you stay focused on the shot, not on the cue ball. So you should not be looking at the cue ball when you make contact with it. You should be looking at your object ball. And so that will help you figure out where you actually hit the cue ball. And if you're not hitting it where you thought you were, then you have to adjust your stroke and figure out what you're doing wrong with it. So with that, I will leave you for today. This has been part 2 of the specialty shots category. Today we talked about shots that involve kisses and caroms, and how to take advantage of those, and why you only shoot those as a last resort, unless you've got something that's a setup like that 3-rail shot that I showed at the very end. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.